Festival. Thank you for joining us on this early morning on day 3 of the MIFA. Really glad to have you here. And also, can we just appreciate this tent? I came in here and I was like, wow, this tent is amazing.
It's a beautiful tent.
Yeah, it's so good. I'll introduce myself. I'm Kelly Mingwan. I'm from the marketing team here at Autodesk, and I'll be moderating today's panel. And before we dive in, if you haven't already, there's food in the back. We've got some breakfast, coffee, juice, and then we'll also have sort of like a networking event right after the talk if you want to chat with our panelists or with one another. So feel free to stick around right after. So let's dive in. Let's get to business. Most of you have noticed that AI is sort of a hot topic. It's everywhere. People are talking about it. There are a lot of conversations around it. You've probably, maybe doom scrolled on your phone or even heard about it at the festival this year. And there's a lot of mixed emotions as well. For some people, it's excitement. For some people, it might be a little bit of anxiety. But especially for artists and creatives, there's a lot of questions as well around AI, and that's exactly what we're going to be diving in today. We're going to be looking at AI through a creative lens, through the artist lens. We're going to be looking at how it's shaping the industry, some ethical considerations that come with it as well, and some of the new possibilities that it could bring to storytellers and artists as well. We're lucky to be joined by a really great group of panelists today to help us unpack all of it. So let's jump right in. Let's just start with introductions. Let's start easy. Why don't you guys start by introducing yourselves, share a bit about your current role, and a bit about your background and what sparked your interest in AI. So maybe we'll start with Nikola.
Perfect. I'm Nikola Todorovic, co-founder, CEO of Wonder Dynamics. We're currently part of Autodesk. We got acquired last year, so I work alongside Kelly. Me and my co-founder Tye, I was a visual effects artist and a supervisor, and we really stumbled upon AI really early on. We started a company about 2016, and in 2018 we really were planning to make our own films. We were both writing. Me and Tye. Tye's a young actor and a producer, and we always wrote films, whether it's sci-fi or animation, and we realized there's no way we can afford to get funding for either. To make it more meta, we were writing a film kind of set in the near future around how robotics will affect us and humanity, and we really stumbled kind of early on we were building more of an interactive experience where you can kind of have a conversation with the character in the show. And cognitive AI was really early then, it wasn't really developed. And then we really started to focus, how can we use AI in production? The idea was, can we make sci-fi on a budget? Can we really, because I come from an indie space as well, I was always very frustrated how you really have to jeopardize your vision because of the budgets, especially in the indie space. You can't really afford a lot of CG shots or animated characters.
That's relatable for a lot of people.
Right, and both Tye and I, we said, okay, let's look into this kind of technology. We called it visual AI at the time. There was no term generative AI. Started digging deeper into kind of self-driving cars and robotics, and started building on top of that. And we always said, selfishly, we really started the company because we wanted to tell our own films. But then about 6 months to a year in, we realized, okay, this is bigger than just us. So let's turn it into a platform that we can, get people that they're also kind of in the same situation and trying to figure out how to tell stories on a budget. And that's how we start.
Awesome. So with that entrepreneurial spirit, it's actually a good segue into Irmak. If you want to introduce yourself.
Hello everyone, I'm Irmak Atabek. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Kids AI. In Kids AI is a child-first technology and media company, and we are developing AI assistant for children and AI literacy media. My background is production. I'm a producer for a long time. Before Kids AI, I founded a children's media company called Mako Kids, and we've been producing quality content for a long time, working a lot with NGOs. UNICEF is one of our main clients for a long time. Not only we did media projects, we also did lots of social behavioral change kind of projects. So we're coming from that background. And my interest to AI is coming from a very philosophical point of view. I did my master's on psychology of religion, and my whole interest was like this whole cognitive evolution of human beings. And at this point, we're in such an interesting place that as human beings, we created an artificial form of intelligence, and in our evolution, we are now dealing with a very interesting problem. And as coming from children's media, working with children, we realized that like, okay, AI is now out there, and children need to interact. They're interacting with that. Even if we say, oh, it's dangerous, blah, blah, it's out. It's like Pandora's box is opened, and it's out there. So children are interacting with AI, then we started to think on how should be the relationship between children and the machine. So is it a friend? Is it a companion? What exactly is that like when we define that? Because it's going to be a very different experience for children. We grow up, we are coming from a very manual times that we had seen literally the birth of internet and like coming to all these technologies and everything. But today's children at the age of 5, they're digital natives. Like it's my daughter, she's 5 and she's interacting with ChatGPT. It's a very different experience for them. So the whole idea was like, okay, we need to define that. Like we need to define that health relationship between AI and children. Then we wrote a project called Zoe and Ollie, and this is the story of, it's a media project actually. This is the story of a 10-year-old girl whose childhood dream was to be friends with a unicorn. Growing up, learning that unicorns are not real, she builds her own AI and solar-powered unicorn robot. So it's basically like she's creating an AI assistant. Then we were like, okay, someone has to like create these AI assistants, and if we're gonna let our children to interact with that assistant, maybe as like people from that industry and also the parents, we should be involved in that and produce that. So we are in that. I'm mostly on that part, but of course now in the production, we're looking into creating an AI powered pipeline. I always like to say AI powered because yes, it's a generative AI, but it's not like creating everything from scratch. Like there is always this human involvement. Yeah, here we are, basically.
That's awesome. I love that you have a good connection to the next generation, which I think is a good segue into Chris's.
Yeah, amazing. How do I follow that up? Awesome. I love what you're doing. Chris Ebeling, creative technologist, entrepreneur, digital artist. I run my own consultancy agency called Beyond Horizons. I've always been interested in new technologies, always played with the new stuff. So I've operated in blockchain space, AI space. I'm an advisor and industry and education advisor for Epic Games as well. And like Nikola, I was an artist once, almost 20 years in the trenches, but then found my kind of sweet spot, which sits in the intersection of industry and education. I really care about, again, building ecosystems, sustainable ecosystems, fostering the next wave of talent, having industry operate well with education, but also vice versa. So listening to the students' fears and needs, which AI is one of them, but then also working with industry and how we can, of course, train and give internships and do it right so we can have this like sustainable loop. So yeah, work a lot in technology and love animation, which was one of my, for 10 years I was an animator. I loved it with Animalogic. Hi, Caitlin. Which is now Netflix animation, so yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for those introductions. I love to hear how all of you kind of have this tie-in with art and technology. So it's what makes all of you really great and unique for this conversation. So let's jump right in. We know that AI is sort of reshaping the creative process, and it's not just changing how stories are told, it's also changing who gets to tell those stories as well. And that brings up a lot of great, exciting possibilities, especially for people who historically might have been left out of those opportunities. So maybe Nikola, I'll start with you. How do you think AI can make filmmaking, animation, and visual effects more achievable or accessible?
Yeah, I think we're in a very interesting time, right, in our industry. It's no secret that, especially in indie filmmaking side, I've been in the industry for about 20 years, and I've never seen it this difficult to get funding for a film. Between this and kind of transitioning streaming, it's been quite of a challenging time, and I think one of the main causes of that is it's getting more and more expensive to produce content. But also I think for me, I come from a very small country. I was born in Bosnia, I lived in Serbia and Croatia, and moved to US, kind of one-way ticket to go to school there, pursue kind of career in filmmaking, and it took me a long time to break into an industry. It's a really kind of closed industry in a way, right? And so what I was excited about AI originally is really about that opportunity of that you don't need. I call it, we always need permission to tell our stories from someone, whether it's a producer or a studio exec or someone. You need a permission, right? So I do see the AI kind of opening up that space and letting people tell their stories. Now, of course, I would say long term I'm extremely optimistic about AI, but short term, there's no secret that it is going to be a shakeup in our industry, right? Certain roles will change, certain specialized skills will have to shift, right? So I'm not someone who says, hey, AI is going to be great for all the creatives. It's going to be quite a bit of challenge to adapt. I think visual effects is usually always the first, because we're so close to technology in visual effects, it's usually the first field that requires you to learn and adapt your skills. But a lot of our skills, I think, were shaped based on the tools that were built, right? But I do think at the end of the day, we do need to bring the cost down of creating this content, and I don't think storytelling should be gate-kept by a certain location or a certain number of people, that are fortunate enough to be in certain positions. So I think to me, it's very exciting in the next 5-10 years to see what's going to happen.
That's great. And Ermak, I feel like you might resonate with that as well, based in Kenya.
Definitely. I mean, it's all about adaptation, like Nikola says. We used to, when I started, it was just the end of from film to digital tools. There was time you used to cut the films and connect. So it's just a tool, and then came all these editing tools. Now comes AI and so on. So it's just like adaptation. But after you sent the questions, I was thinking that actually, because I've been living in Kenya for the past 8 years, and now you see that whenever there's a new technology, it's like, yes, this is gonna democratize the whole world and so on, especially with blockchain, it's gonna help Africa the most and so on. Still, it's whenever you look at so many of those places without electricity, it's like AI democratizing anything is hard to say. So it's the opportunity gap always is widening with new technologies. And this is not AI's fault or anyone else's fault. These are the world problems, because at the same time in the world, we're living in literally different centuries in many ways. That's great that, of course, especially with lots of initiatives, maybe it might be easier to kind of provide young people with tools with AI. But mostly, I think the real support would be big institutions to kind of invest more in these underrepresented those regions to kind of upskill students and young people to come to this industry. Yes, it definitely makes it easier. From all those days that you used to have these flames and all these VFX machines, hundreds of $1,000s. Now these are not like that. This definitely helps, but still, it's the opportunity gap is always there. Then Chris is doing all these trainings and helping people with that, right?
Yeah, we're trying to bridge the gap, of course. But just to point on the hype curve of all these other technologies, right? Blockchain went up and it came down, and it's kind of finding its base now. AI is not taking a dip. That's an exponential curve right now, right? It's accelerated, but it's not going down. It's steady moving. So for us in education and in industry, we have to try to keep up with that curve, and it's hard. It's hard when schools have a 3-year program, for example, and they have to reform. They don't have time to train the trainers to then further train the students who need to be trained in this. So that's pretty much where we're trying to sit as well and shake things up and accelerate training. We're doing some stuff based in Europe. One is a PANEURAMA project, which is a pan-European alliance, where we have 4 schools all around Europe and a lot of industry partners, including Wonder Dynamics. That's where we met Mark Sterling and you and the team, because we want to empower students to learn these tools quicker, right? So it's more, visually it's like a steroid injection of competencies that they otherwise can't get in school. So it's like an accelerator program. We're not going to bridge the gap, but we're going to try to move the needle. And then to your point as well, in terms of the adoption of it and empowering creativity, you know, I worked in the Web3 space, right? And to work in the Web3 space, you need to understand what Web2 did. And Web2 did the likes of, you know, Logan Paul, from doing 4-second Vine videos and being a, you know, quote unquote dickhead or funny, to then, you know, rigging fights with Mike Tyson in the ring, you know, 5 to 8 years later, right? The empowerment of telling stories, to produce content and put yourself out there, giving everybody a microphone, a camera, a place to, you know, try out their acting skills. Sorry if there's Logan Paul fans there. I don't mind him, actually. I think he's smart. He's done well. But do you know what I mean? Like, it's a tool that people now have been given to democratize their acting talents, right? And AI to me is the same. I agree, it's going to disrupt multiple industries. It already is. Everything from law to our visual and creative space. But we're going to figure it out, and we're going to adapt, because that's what we do as humans. We're agile, we're adaptable. It's one of our key, like, human skills. And then from there, it's going to empower people, you know, and young students to become amazing storytellers, people who otherwise couldn't, right? And this is what I try to, I have a hopeful outlook on it. I do really believe that, you know, when I speak to students, especially at like FMX and NSC, which there's a lot, and they're there with their big eyes and they're worried about the future. Should I really be studying this? Yes, you should be studying this, because we still need your artistic eye. We still need your, like, core competencies, right? You still need to know what good color is and good lighting is, good animation looks like, composition, et cetera, and storytelling, narrative, camera, all that beautiful stuff, to then use this tool to empower you to be a one-man army, maybe, or a two-man army, right? So then I think we're gonna get a lot of more cooler stories out of it, way more content. And I think we're gonna decipher from what's really been done with the creative touch and the artistic touch versus somebody who's just regurgitated and prompted something, and which we see on LinkedIn every day.
And you actually just jumped in right into my next question.
I just read your questions, actually.
It's great.
So,
I mean, no, it's a great segue. I mean, you're saying it really well. You know, this doesn't feel really like a hype cycle. Like, does feel more like an exponential growth. So what are some of those core skills you think that will always remain essential, no matter how advanced these technologies get? Maybe Ermac or Nikola, if you want to jump in.
I mean, skills are changing. Right now with AI, prompt engineering is a new skill that we need to be adopting. And what is it? It's basically like to get the right output, what input you are putting in. So it really comes to thinking, like Chris is saying, it's not like just generate something, it's out. What do you really envision, and what are you trying to get as an output? So this skill still belongs to a human being. That's why I think it's gonna just be there. And throughout the time, with history, like with every innovation, we change skills. All the job market has changed. So we're just at the we're just going through another change and in our lifestyle even. So with the adaptation tools, I think everyone will survive. I'm not really pessimistic about that. I just see that throughout history there were different things which define the survival of the fittest. Basically, now as we're in a very interesting era in history. So maybe these digital skills are gonna help us be the fittest in today's world. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll maybe add. There's a bit of a separation, I think, in how we make these tools. You have on one side a lot of startups that. My dilemma is usually this. I come from a film space, right? So I'm very passionate about storytelling in our industry. You have a flip side of when you have a startup. Usually investors will kind of try to influence you to go towards social media and AI video, right? Because that's where most money is, right? That's where you're gonna get the most adoption, right? I see a lot of startups building that, and I like to separate that. I don't think we're gonna live in a future where we're just prompting our movies. You know, for technical reasons, you can't prompt performance. You can't really describe a performance. I also hope we don't go in a future where we're just watching, you know, actors that don't exist, synthetic actors. So it really is going to be kind of multimodal. Nobody's yet figured out what that user experience and the tool of the future is going to be. Most of the stuff, I mean, we've been talking about AI for 3-4 years now and seeing results. It's not there yet, right? It's not there yet. But if you look at 3 years ago, it's like it's over, Hollywood's dead, AI is here, right? It's always a little bit of that hype cycle. I do think we should separate the two. One is if you're making your content for social media. The other one is if you're making films and you're making kind of long-term narrative. I think as far as skills, storytelling and recognizing, as Chris mentioned, recognizing when something is good is really something that takes years to learn. And I know that from personal experience. If I look at stuff I did as a VFX artist right out of school.
You're telling me you weren't great from the
Terrible. Now when I look at it, I'm embarrassed of it. I also, used to direct and write, so same thing. When you look at it, you're like, I thought this was good at the time, right? But I also see it with our team, right? We have artists in our team. We also have engineers, and you can see sometimes, you can recognize a junior artist. It doesn't matter what tool they used, right? Because you're not gonna understand why this shot is working or why this scene is working, or kind of story structure is something that's very, it takes a long time to learn and understand why this character act is working and why people are relating to it. I do think with AI, we're just gonna kind of push the starting point a little bit more. As Chris mentioned, I don't think we'll want to pay to watch and respect something. I think as humans, we recognize laziness. And if someone spent 10 minutes to make a feature film, are you really gonna go to theater and take time out of your life to go see something and someone spent 10 minutes? I think we just don't know what that new step. So let's say this. Right now, it takes 3 years to make a film, right? Like animation or a film that has CG characters with animation, right? It's a really long process, extremely expensive. Let's say that comes down to 3 months to 6 months, right? Or let's say, worst case scenario, let's say it comes out to 10-15 minutes, right? If someone can prompt it. That's a new base. And we're gonna have to figure out what is that now artist is doing. If I can really push that baseline, we're gonna wanna push it further and figure out, we just don't know yet what that is. I always say it's like describing to an artist 100 years ago and showing them Avatar and try to explain to them how this was made. They're not gonna understand. That's exactly where we are right now. We just don't understand what that next level is. But I think we always, throughout history, we always wanted to push it further. We always recognize, okay, someone, like, I don't know, at least me, I respect filmmakers that are like, wow, that was brilliant. Like, the amount of effort and thought that went into this and the problem solving that went in it, you kind of subconsciously respect that. So I do think, we're just yet to figure out what that is.
Awesome. Well, so we sort of talked about kind of how AI is changing the industry and how it can unlock new opportunities for creators, but we can't have a discussion around AI without talking about ethics. And ethics in AI isn't just a conversation for engineers. I think we can all agree with that. I think it's something that everyone in the creative space needs to consider. So as artists or even entrepreneurs yourselves, how are you thinking about that responsibility in your own work? So maybe Irma, I don't know if you want to start with that.
Sure, it's our main focus in what we are doing, because right now the biggest problem with all these LLMs, video generator tools and everything, we're literally extracting, harvesting all these people's data in internet. It's many softwares, I would say, and literally generating more visuals or like text out of that. It's exploitation of people's data. And it's an ethical problem. This is not only an ethical problem about AI. We have lots of ethical problems in the world. So besides it's an AI problem, it's also a human problem. So and in of course, it's mainly innovation comes first. Regulation followed later. It has always been like that. Governments, bureaucracy and everything, they're always late to follow. So I think what we need to do is how can we first of all understand the ethics of all these things ourselves and push these to governments and the companies we work with and the people we work with. How can we really choose it ethically? Because otherwise we're really extracting people's data. And here, let's say what we are trying to do with Kids AI is completely licensing data. And now with legal team, we are working on a revenue share model. Like, is there a way to kind of have a backlog of like the whole chain of thought and going to kind of report where are we getting that data that we're using in that output, and can we come up with a revenue share model that makes it a win-win situation both the artist and the user. So I think we're at the very beginning of all these things. That's why it's a chaos, and there are lots of like legal situations like happening with all these big firms and all these things. So it's a transition time, and now all these governments are coming up with more and more regulations. Still not enough, but I'm seeing like lots of young people are very against AI, and like they feel really offended with that. This is also, in my opinion, actually, this is not also a solution, because it's there, it's out there, and it's working. There are like more and more tools coming in. How can we now use these tools ethically? I think the main question is that, and how can we really push governments to come up with more and more regulations to regulate the market?
And Chris, you're working with a lot of students, educational institutions. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, just to your point, to segue on you mentioned this, this revenue share. I mean, you should put that on the blockchain, right?
We
thought of that, right? Yeah.
And the blockchain.
Yeah, and to like segue on that in terms of experience we had, we created a digital horse racing blockchain game back in 2018. This was before regulation happened, so this was in Australia. But what we did was we worked close with the government to form regulations. So for people who are creating AI models or creating AI, programs and whatnot, they need to work side by side with government to help create, what the regulations are going to be and what the ethics are. It's going to take time because it's still happening in the blockchain space, which was like, 5-7 years ago now, and we're just kind of getting started now. In terms of with students and young learners, it's the same thing. Like, what I want them to do is not, even I have a daughter who does music, right? She's 17, she writes her own songs and they're fantastic, blah, blah, blah. Maybe I'm biased. But then I tell her, I make these songs in AI and send them to her, just to and she hates it. She gets so fucking annoyed, which is great. And I just tell her, look, you just got to be aware that it's out there, but it will never replace her originality. I just actually had the conversation with her on the way here today. Because once you're original, once you're a director, once you have those foundational skills, this is now a tool for you to use, and you will stand out. Like, we're going to be able to decipher the right from wrong. And it's like we saw it in music, just staying in music, when the electrical music came out, synthesizers and all that. People were frowning at that for 5 years until they got, to an understanding that actually, hey, this is music too, this is creative, we can use this. And now, almost every hit has a bit of electronics in it, right? So it's kind of our cycle. The internet was the same. What are we going to use the internet for? It's a fad. Well, we can't live without it, right? If you don't have Wi-Fi connection, then we're all turning
we wouldn't have this event right now.
Like 3-year-old babies, like, oh, I gotta work. Yeah, so we wouldn't have this event either, right? You guys wouldn't know where to come.
And internet became social norm. At the beginning, like you say, it was like everybody was so scared, this is Satan, even like there were these times like it's that. Then it became a social norm. So right now we're still at the hype stage of AI, and in the next 5 years it's gonna be our social norm. Maybe we'll all have like, hey, I called my mom, I'm coming 5 minutes late, and all these things. Like, it's gonna be a very part of our life, and it will come with all these like changes, regulations, and everything.
But on that as well, we were talking just before, and something that I'm involved with in Denmark as well, is where I live at the moment, is the reform from, it's called the K-12 reform, and it's from 1 to 12 year, age classes 1 to 12. Because they need more digital literacy, and it's not just AI. We haven't even figured out the social media space for young children yet, right? Like, I think that is a really important place to start before we jump to AI as well. But now we have to do it in parallel because AI is not going away, right? And so we need to start young, earlier. We need to teach them what the internet's about, how to use it, how not to use it. We talk about phishing, what's real, what's fake. How it works and how it's like fighting for your attention. You get put in your little echo chamber. So if you like one thing, you then end up loving one thing, right? Like, the way these things are built are to, fight for our attention, but then also control us a bit, right? Controversial maybe, I don't know. Black Mirror.
And Nikola, what about you? As someone who's developing these sort of tools, how are you thinking about ethics?
Yeah, we were very cautious about it coming from, both me and my co-founder, Tye, as an actor, I was an artist, and we actually, you kind of have to resist the urge because it's very easy to jump on some of these, building the tools and not worrying about where your data is coming from. We were early on very, very cautious about it. We actually, a lot of people put us in a Gen AI category. We actually are not generative solution. One, there's always been about how do I get my input shot, performance. So we're tracking, your body or face performance from the actor and transferring into a CG character that an artist built. So, getting everything from a shot, from a camera track and lighting, compositing, all of that. So it really is only going to be as good as your cinematographer is, right? So we wanted to keep that VFX and movie magic as part of it. You had to resist because early on it's very, very, very easy to jump on that. So for us, all of our training, if not most of our training data is synthetic data. We learned early on the majority of data, especially kind of for markless mocap or AI mocap, was your motion capture studio shot that really is for gaming more. Kind of camera on a high angle that gets your full body shot. And when you're doing, your film or you're doing kind of layout for your animation, you really want to move the camera and kind of do that filmmaking language of, if we have internally something we call a PTA, Paul Thomas Anderson kind of boogie night test, where like, does it break down if I'm doing, a shot all around and kind of going wide and pushing and following the actors. So that's one side of it, so which we, stayed true to. And the other one is, we had obviously Tye being an actor, and we had Steven Spielberg on our board and Joe Russo brothers. We did a big film with them before we launched the platform. So it's very important for us, to build it in a way that we can kind of stand behind it. My fear is with ethics is that people forget about it very easily when technology advanced. I can see it already. We launched 2023. We started building 2018. Launched 2023. People were, really praising us about ethics and all this, and there was a big conversation about copyright and training data, and whenever a new tool would come, you could see the comments on social media on it. It's disappearing slowly, right? It kind of goes in a cycle, but I do think because it comes from people in Silicon Valley making tools for people in the entertainment industry. It's two different personas. And they don't understand or care about it, to be honest, because as I mentioned again, they're not making tools for our industry, they're making tools for social media, for video generation, right? So it's very different. So we'll see what happens with the fair use. I think the UK lawsuit just started, the big one with Getty and Stability, and that's kind of one of the big ones that's starting. And then just yesterday, I think Disney is suing Midjourney. So we'll see how it plays out. I'm not a believer in stopping the progress of technology completely, but I'm a believer in guardrails and being responsible, because most of these companies, they know where their data is coming from. They're just not going to tell you, right? Most of them are scraping internet data. So we cautiously and purposely build a system really for synthetic data, because you can recreate majority of this thing with synthetic data. It's just more expensive and it takes more time.
Can I, how many people have tried Flow Studio or Wonder Dynamics in the room? Yeah, not many. Okay, because it's amazing.
Thank you.
And because what it does is it gives you actually all the data. So if you're doing a mocap, like if you take your phone up now and you film somebody walking down the street, which was the early test I was doing, like playing around, my son playing basketball and all that, it gives you everything back, and it's a cloud-based system that then gives you the full project file, so you can go in and, so it's controllable AI. It's not just going to give you something that you can't control. It gives you a base, a template, and then from there you can then get artistic on top of it. You can export it to Unreal Engine, which is what I would do, and then from there you can also then have real time and this AI process working in. And again, it just empowers creativity, which is amazing.
I didn't tell Chris to say this. This is all.
No, you didn't tell me to say. But again, I like new technology and I like stuff that really does empower creators. And for if my 12-year-old son can all of a sudden film something funny and then just upload it, pick a character and put it in, and now he's a robot or now he's something else, that's cool. All right, now he can tell his stories.
But no, I'm glad you mentioned that, because we did that on purpose, because we saw early on that this promise of AI is going to give you final pixels really comes from people that don't really understand the process. And the process is always iterative nature. You make something, you get back notes, whether it's your animation supervisor or your director or whatever, and there's always discovery of a shot, and past 20 they might change their mind and give every. So we purposely build it. That's one of the reasons we also joined Autodesk. We purposely build it. We're like, okay, if AI can give me 50-60% there, give me all the passes and data I need so I can control the fine details, because really that's where the artists shine, is in these are the creative choices you make. As a VFX artist, I was always frustrated how much repetitive tasks you do before you get to the creative part, right? So that's what we really wanted to solve it. And for me, the only way that still works is with a combination of existing tools, whether it's Blender, Maya, Unreal, what you're using, and the AI tools. So we purposely build it in that way. Obviously, these research problems will get solved in generative AI, but nobody yet. That's why I really am a big believer. Prompting is going to be just one small piece of it. It really has to be a multimodality. We're still going to animate. We're still going to have to move the camera, because it's impossible to describe when you want it. As I said, performance and reaction. Most of acting is reacting, right? So you can't really describe that. But yeah, thanks for reminding me that it's important.
Well, it's actually kind of a good transition into the next question, and you kind of touch on it a little bit, but how can artists strike that right balance, right, between creativity and automation? Where do you see it adding value versus where do you think we should be a bit more cautious? Maybe Irma or Grace, go ahead.
You go ahead.
Yeah, I think Nikola said it, for like laziness, right? Like, I think we're gonna be able to decide for who's just prompted something and done something quick and cool. And there's layers to this. Like, everybody in this room is an artist, a digital artist. We've kind of ruined watching movies for ourselves because we can pick out little pixels when they go wrong. I remember I started out as a rotoscoper, right? Like in the grunts, in the depths of the dungeon. And when I then went and watched a movie back then, I could see all the fucking shit roto, and I'd be like, I can't watch this anymore, right? Because you didn't notice it's ruined movie making, right? But then it also empowers you when you see something which is really cool and like beautifully done, and you understand what it took to make that shot, right? So I think we're going to empower a lot of young artists, creators who don't have a fine arts background or have 3 years of college in animation or storytelling or film. People before that, you're gonna see that stuff, and it's gonna be that stuff, right? And like you said, that's gonna go into social media, rain, and empower that.
Easier entry also, I think. We saw it when we first launched. A lot of people, would start using it, and then they would be like, what's rigging? What's clean plate? I never knew what that is. And they started learning. As CG was scary for me, and animation was quite scary. I come from compositing, and then when I got more on the CG side, it was a really hard learning curve. And then I see a lot of artists who are scared to go in a certain direction just because it is very complicated, it is very hard. And so I do see, even if you just use the AI tools to kind of step in a storytelling and practice, I think that's important, because let's say you're making your feature films, if you're lucky, maybe you'll make 5 to 10 in your career, if you're really lucky, right? Because the process takes so much time. Same with short films, right? Maybe you'll start with 2-3 short films before you get your first feature. It's a lot of effort and many years to go through that. So at least with these tools, you'll be able to practice your storytelling, and you're not going to be great at the beginning, but you can constantly do it. It's not going to cost you as much. It's not going to take that much time.
And just as an educational tool as well. I mean, how many people are using ChatGPT in the room? And the ones who don't put their hand up, don't lie. Are you sure? Good on you. There is a think before you prompt campaign I want to start. It's one of my ideas because of the sustainability angle of things. I think we shouldn't be prompting just to prompt, because it does churn out.
You trademark this. You shouldn't have.
No, this is for us. Hey, it's a movement. Let's start it. Think before you prompt, right? T-shirts everywhere. But as an educational tool, if you're stuck, and this is also what I say to the students, there's no better time now. You've got the internet. I mean, we didn't even have the proper internet when we were learning. They've got the internet and they can Google stuff, blah, 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 blah. But now they can go into ChatGPT, and if you're working in Epic or Unreal Engine, let's say, and you've got a blueprint issue or something, or a code in Unity or something, you can put that in there, and it can help you find out the bugs and help you kind of understand this better. Like, hey, I'm stuck, what do I do next? So now they have access to an educator next to them as well, which is empowering. But again, it does mean that they have to use it as well and understand how to use it and be taught how to use it. Hopefully also sustainable.
No, and it's like AI can mimic inspiration, but it's not really inspiration. So when you even talk to ChatGPT, sometimes it's very anthropomorphized. It says, "Oh, I enjoyed our conversation. That's really inspiring." So I think it's very important to understand what is machine learning, what is really like inspiration, all these things. Because exactly the learning, how machine learns is mimicking human learning, mimicking human thinking. So it's really important to understand that whole background. Still, inspiration is coming from the humans. So if this AI can generate something, because we came to this moment with that much of cumulative information and inspiration and all these things, so that now it's mimicking us to generate more and more things. But the real inspiration is still coming from the human beings. And if artists is gonna do something, yes, now maybe with these tools they have more time. So now I think artists should look around, exposed to more other things, more like learning from more diverse cultures and understanding the world more to come up with even better like ideas and all these things. So inspiration will never, I think, gonna be the thing of the AI. So it's the main thing we keep still.
It's a means to an end. I think a good filmmaker is going to be a good filmmaker if you give. Let's say the Gen AI tools are really solved and everything's working perfectly. Still, if you give it, to type A filmmaker, and you give it to someone who's just starting, you can't tell me they're going to produce the same thing. There's no way, right? Well, we're seeing a lot of garbage out now. It's a consequence. I remember during early days of VR, you had a lot of engineers making content and stories, and they were really bad. And then people were judging technology based on that, because these companies really didn't understand how important the storytelling, how hard the storytelling is right on the side. So I do think it just means to an end, and it's a tool at the end of the day. So we're still going to recognize good filmmaking.
Awesome. Well, let's take a step forward, look into what it means for the future, which I know can be a bit scary for some people. So for someone who is just starting out, what do you think are some good first steps to start experimenting with AI?
Maybe I can start this one. I'd say play with the tools, especially for students. I'd say play with the tools. But I always say we're very early in this space. So I think, this is the first company I've ever built, same for my co-founder. It is a really good time to experiment. I think a lot of people just wait kind of to see what tools come out with it. I think what makes our industry really interesting for this is that we always made our own pipelines. And there's so much open source out there. If you go on websites like paperswithcode.com, usually it's about 6 months delay from a release. So let's say, Runway Luma or someone released something. Usually 6 months before that, there was some research paper that this was based on. Nobody's building in vacuum. Everybody's building on top of a lot of research, a lot of smart people. Usually it comes from academia. So my advice would be, don't just play with existing tools, but it's a bit overwhelming because you're going to see a lot of tools out there. I would say, don't be scared to look at some of these research papers. Even though they are overwhelming, you can actually put it in ChatGPT, it can explain to you where it came from. No, really. And you can find a lot of open source, and you can learn how to package some of these things and combine it. Because I do think it needs to come from our industry, these tools, because only we will understand what exactly we need, right, on the problem solving. And you can combine a lot of these tools on top of it. You can use, MCPs for Maya or Unreal or something to kind of get you quicker to what you need. So I think what you said is, the worst thing you can do is just say, I hate it, I'm not gonna look at it, I'll ignore it. I think that's wrong, because AI, what I get frustrated is everybody's like, putting everything under AI umbrella, right? Or a tent, no pun intended. But it's wrong, because we've been using machine learning in our industry, especially in visual effects, for 20 years, right? And people are starting to put machine learning under AI as well. It's too big of a field, right? You can't put it all under one umbrella. So there's a lot of good, even if you're like, let's say you don't like prompting, you don't like Gen AI, there's a lot of AI tools you can discover that can just speed you up a little bit. That's my fear, is like, as a student, if you go completely against it, you will be slow. But that doesn't mean you have to completely change your skill and just use everything.
I mean, as Nikola said, almost all. I'll just gonna.
I'm sorry, I'm not getting that question.
Yeah, I think understanding is one of the most important thing. Like, it's how all this thing is happening, and it also comes to the ethics as well. What tools we are using, because even from an LLM's point of view, every LLM has a specific AI behavior. So what is that behavior? What is that character behind that LLM? And what kind of vision is put behind it? I think understanding those things is very important, because to move forward, technology is out there, and what will differentiate the tools is how they are built, what kind of vision it's put behind that. And as we're all talking about ethics and like how it's going to change all these things, one thing we can do as the consumers of these products, we should look into how they built these products, who is behind that, and are we using an ethical product? I think that's very important to move forward.
Yeah.
There is nothing left.
No, the only thing I'll say is, and again, this is to the students, but also the teachers and the leaders and the mentors and the leads and the people who are, transferring competencies and are training people up, is you have to stay curious. Like, you have to be curious. You can't, like you said, you can't just say, oh, this is AI, I'm not against it. You need to actually, I mean, even if you're against them, know thy enemy, right? Like, you need to understand how it works, what it's doing, because you're going to be up against it at some point in your career. You're going to be in a business meeting where it comes up and you need to be able to talk about it, or a project, or as a student, if there's how many students are here today? I don't think, there's a couple, yeah. As a student, so I'm speaking to you too, you need to be aware that, that if you're this is what I say is, like, if we were exactly the same person on paper going for the same job, and I just happen to have like a short course in AI or an AI competencies outlined, then I'm afraid that it would be me that was getting that job, because I think the industry is looking, especially for people who are abreast of new technologies. So just having that awareness, you don't have to agree with it, you don't have to love it, you don't have to use it. I mean, if you're a fine arts painter, you don't need to use this, right? And we still appreciate fine art. Fine art is amazing when somebody's spent, 40 hours or 50 hours doing something. We as humans love that stuff, that hand-created stuff, right? So it's not gonna take away of that, but yeah, be curious, always.
I was just gonna say, I feel like just the shared perspective here is just approach it from a place of curiosity.
Yes.
Yeah. So what do you think is the best case scenario and worst case scenario? Like, what do you think is most exciting opportunity and the biggest risks for how AI could impact artists over the next few years?
Well, they've made many movies which are worst case scenarios. This is Cyberdyne technology, what was his name, Miles, from Terminator 2? You don't remember that? Terminator 2?
Great impression.
Miles? Okay, it was good, yeah.
I think you lost everyone.
Yeah. That's just my brain goes. Anyway, so the worst case scenario is, we got Boston Robotics, we got everything that, NVIDIA and Jensen Huang are cooking up over there with the robots. We have AI, and we're going into, what's the next human thinking AI? There's another concept coming where it can think like us. And so worst case scenario, yeah, there's robots. I mean, you can buy a robot now for $30,000 that can, get you kitchen cups very slowly and put things away, which is the beginning of something.
Never buy the first generation.
No, well, that's it. Like Terminator 2 was the second generation, right? And the T-1000 was 1,000. But yeah, that's worst case. Best case, it empowers people to tell stories, culture preservation, language preservation, like. It brings back history and art in a way that we've never seen before, and an exponential growth, just like it's going, and empowers everybody in this room and everybody beyond this room and this stage to tell stories, because storytelling, we love it, we resonate with it, it's created our society, it has created the rules and norms we live by. It's human nature, yeah, we need belonging, we need stories to make us belong, we need heroes, we need idols, and now it empowers everybody to do that. And I don't think there's ever been a better time with the tools available. Well, maybe in 10 years is a better time, but today we're at a better place where young storytellers, art connoisseurs, lovers can now freely express and tell stories much quicker and much more powerful. So, yeah.
Ermac?
I mean, I think we'll find the balance at some point. Like right now, it's such a hype, like all these robotics and everything. I don't know if we really want to have AI pets all around, or like AI nannies. Like, who wants that? It's how you want that? Yeah. It's I think we'll find
Take
that
the trash out.
balance.
If you take a trash out, I'll take it. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
How many people have one of those
Dishes.
lawnmowers?
Okay, you see, like in the balance.
Everything
these guys
described, I
want
was like,
that.
yeah, I can't wait for this.
I mean, yeah, I think it's the more we experience with these tools and everything, it's a hype. It's whenever you see like, oh wow, look at these like robots. They're like really competent. They're doing literally like humanly tasks and everything. But at the same time, like human connection is something that makes us human. Like we need to come up with what makes us human at the end. Because even if we go into all these digital worlds and everything, at the end, we are physical beings. We're subject to that physics, and we're not going to be able to live in these like other worlds, like in Inception or so on. It's not the realistic thing. And again, it's coming to: do we really want that? Do we really want to go into these worlds? Or what are we going to appreciate about our humanity? So yeah, I think it's in time we'll find some sort of a balance. And AI is not the only threat. There are so many other worldly threats in the world. It's just one of those, and as we're not doing well with the others, with environment, with many other like things, we're not doing well anyway. So and we've been wiped out a couple times before. Maybe we're gonna just like, it's gonna be our end, we'll be wiped out, we're gonna
Be
come
the
back
robots.
again. Yeah, I mean, like it's when you look
Reminding
at
me
the
of WALL-E.
whole human history, like we've been wiped out a couple times and came back. So it's part of that whole history. As hominids, we've been here for like 2 million years now. And we're living just like maximum 100-year lives.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, maybe I'll talk it more on like a kind of storytelling and media entertainment side of things. For me, worst case scenario is, we're gonna have, kind of only films with synthetic humans, and we're gonna have celebrities like Rock sitting at home and licensing their likeness, never being on set and just doing